24 hours ago, I thought blood meant everything. Then my own family voted me out of our inheritance like I was some stranger off the street choosing my manipulative cousin over their own daughter. They cut me off without a second thought, believing her lies about me stealing from our family trust. But here's the thing about family loyalty. It works both ways. And when they broke that sacred bond, they had no idea they'd just declared war on the wrong woman. Because I had evidence that would destroy them all. Before we dive into how I completely dismantled the people who were supposed to love me most, I have to ask, where are you watching from? If you've ever felt betrayed by family who chose sides without hearing your truth, hit that like button because you'll understand every single move I made. And trust me, you'll want to subscribe because this family revenge story has more twists than a soap opera. Now let me tell you how I went from the family scapegoat to the architect of their complete downfall. My name is Harper, and 6 months before my family destroyed our relationship forever, I started noticing things that didn't add up. It began innocently enough. I was helping my grandmother organize her financial documents when I stumbled across discrepancies that made my stomach drop. Grandma Rose had always been sharp with money, but lately she seemed confused about her accounts. When I offered to help her reconcile her bank statements, I discovered thousands of dollars in withdrawals she couldn't remember making. The signatures looked like hers, but something felt wrong. That's when I found the real bombshell, hidden in a folder marked Family Trust Documents. I discovered that my cousin Miranda had been forged as a co-signer on multiple accounts. Miranda, who lived in a mansion while the rest of us struggled, who always seemed to have money for designer bags and luxury vacations, despite claiming to work part-time at a nonprofit. I spent weeks carefully documenting everything. Miranda had been systematically draining our grandmother's accounts for over 2 years. She'd stolen over $60,000 money that was supposed to fund Grandma Rose's medical care and eventually pass to all the grandchildren equally. But the fraud went deeper than I initially realized. Miranda had convinced our grandmother to sign documents giving her power of attorney when Grandma Rose was on heavy pain medication after her hip surgery. She'd use that authority to redirect insurance payments, sell family heirlooms, and even take out a second mortgage on Grandma's house. The most devastating discovery came when I found emails between Miranda and her boyfriend discussing how they planned to milk the old lady dry before anyone noticed. They joked about my grandmother's memory issues, calling her an easy target, and celebrating each successful withdrawal. My hands shook as I photographed every document, every bank statement, every forged signature. This wasn't just theft. This was elder abuse of the most cruel and calculated kind. Miranda had looked our grandmother in the eye every Sunday dinner, accepting compliments on her success, knowing she was stealing from the woman who'd raised her after her parents died. I knew I had to tell someone, but Miranda had always been the family golden child. She was charming, manipulative, and had convinced everyone that her sudden financial success came from smart investments and hard work. Meanwhile, I was the family skeptic, the one who asked too many questions and made people uncomfortable with my directness. When I approached my parents with the evidence, their reaction crushed me. Instead of examining the documents I'd carefully compiled, my mother immediately accused me of being jealous of Miranda's success. My father said I was trying to stir up trouble, and suggested I was the one with questionable motives. "Harper, this is beneath you," my mother said, barely glancing at the bank statements I'd laid out on their kitchen table. "Miranda has been nothing but generous to this family. She drives Grandma to every doctor's appointment, brings her groceries, handles all her paperwork. And you want to accuse her of stealing?" The irony was suffocating. Miranda was handling Grandma's paperwork because she'd maneuvered herself into that position to facilitate her theft. Her generosity was a calculated strategy to maintain access and deflect suspicion. My brother David, who'd always been Miranda's closest ally, was even more brutal in his dismissal. "You've always resented Miranda," he said coldly. "Ever since we were kids, you couldn't stand that she was more successful, more likable. Now you're trying to destroy her reputation because you can't handle your own failures." The gaslighting was masterful. Within hours, Miranda had somehow learned about my accusations, and began her counterattack. She arrived at the family gathering that weekend with crocodile tears and a carefully crafted story about how I'd been acting strange around Grandma Rose's finances. "I've been worried about Harper for months," Miranda told the assembled family, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. "She's been asking Grandma weird questions about money, suggesting that I'm somehow taking advantage. I think she might be projecting her own financial problems onto me." The room fell silent as every family member turned to look at me. Miranda continued her performance, explaining how she'd reluctantly discovered that I'd been pressuring our grandmother to lend me money for my student loans. It was a complete fabrication, but Miranda had always been skilled at mixing lies with just enough truth to make them believable. "I have bank records showing Harper received several $1,000s from Grandma last year," Miranda said, producing documents I'd never seen before. "I didn't want to embarrass her, but since she's making these horrible accusations against me, I feel I have to defend myself." I stared at the papers in shock. The transactions were real, but they represented money Grandma Rose had given me for my birthday and Christmas over several years. Small amounts that I'd protested accepting, but that she'd insisted on giving. Miranda had compiled them to create a false narrative of financial desperation on my part. The family's reaction was swift and merciless. Within an hour, they'd decided I was the real problem. I was accused of elder abuse, financial manipulation, and attempting to frame an innocent family member to cover my own crimes. "Harper, we're all disappointed in you," my uncle announced, speaking for the group. "Miranda has provided evidence of your questionable behavior, while all you have are conspiracy theories and accusations." The final blow came when they formally voted to remove me from any future inheritance considerations and banned me from visiting Grandma Rose without supervision. Miranda, meanwhile, was appointed as Grandma's official caregiver and financial manager, giving her even more access to steal. As I left that house listening to my own family choose my abuser over me, I realized that playing by their rules would never work. They'd made their choice, and it wasn't justice. So I decided to make my own rules, and Miranda had no idea what was coming for her. Walking away from that family meeting, I felt something shift inside me. The naive part of me that believed family would always do the right thing died that day. In its place grew something harder, smarter, and absolutely determined to expose the truth no matter what it cost. I spent the next 3 weeks in complete isolation from my family, using that time to build an airtight case that even their willful blindness couldn't ignore. But I knew I couldn't do it alone. I needed allies outside the family circle who couldn't be manipulated or bought off. My first stop was Elder Protection Services. Sarah Martinez, the caseworker assigned to Grandma Rose's case, listened to my story with the kind of professional skepticism I'd hoped for. Unlike my family, she didn't dismiss my concerns based on personality conflicts or family politics. "What you're describing is textbook financial elder abuse," Sarah said after reviewing my documented evidence. "The pattern is clear: isolation of the victim, assumption of financial control, and discrediting anyone who questions the arrangement." Sarah helped me understand that Miranda's behavior followed a predictable playbook used by financial predators. The boyfriend relationship, the gradual assumption of caretaking duties, the manipulation of legal documents during vulnerable moments. It was all frighteningly systematic. But Sarah also delivered sobering news about the legal challenges ahead. Family financial abuse cases are notoriously difficult to prosecute, especially when other family members support the accused, she explained. "We'll need irrefutable evidence and preferably testimony from the victim herself." That's where my plan hit its first major obstacle. Grandma Rose's increasing confusion made her an unreliable witness, and Miranda had done an excellent job of positioning herself as the devoted caregiver. Any attempt to question Grandma about the missing money would be framed as harassment by someone the family had already labeled as untrustworthy. I needed a different approach, so I hired a private investigator named Detective James Walsh, a retired police officer who specialized in white-collar crime. James had 20 years of experience with financial fraud, and understood exactly how to build a case that would hold up in court. The good news is that financial crimes leave paper trails, James told me during our first meeting. The bad news is that your cousin has had 2 years to cover her tracks. We need to find the mistakes she made early on before she got sophisticated about hiding her activities. James began a systematic investigation of Miranda's financial history, starting with public records and working toward more sensitive information. What we discovered was even more extensive than I'd initially suspected. Miranda hadn't just stolen from our grandmother. She'd been running variations of the same scam on multiple elderly clients through her nonprofit job. The organization supposedly helped seniors with financial planning, giving Miranda access to vulnerable people who trusted her with their most sensitive information. We found evidence of at least 4 other victims, all elderly women living alone, who'd gradually turned over financial control to Miranda under the guise of assistance with complex paperwork. Each woman had experienced similar patterns of missing money, forged signatures, and manipulated legal documents. The breakthrough came when James discovered Miranda's secret bank account in the Cayman Islands. She'd been funneling stolen money offshore through a complex network of shell companies, believing she was untouchable because her victims were too confused or isolated to fight back. But Miranda had made one crucial error. In her arrogance, she'd documented her crimes in emails with her boyfriend, treating the whole operation like a joke between conspirators. James had contacts in law enforcement who helped him obtain warrants for those email records, and what we found was devastating. "Look at this," James said, showing me printed emails that made my blood boil. "She's not just stealing from them, she's mocking them. Here's an email where she calls your grandmother senile old bat and jokes about how easy it is to get her signature on anything." The emails revealed the full scope of Miranda's operation. She'd stolen over $300,000 from elderly victims over 3 years, using sophisticated financial instruments to hide the money trail. But more than that, the emails showed her complete lack of remorse or conscience about destroying these women's financial security. Armed with this evidence, I felt ready to confront my family again. But James advised patience and strategy. "If we move too quickly, she'll destroy evidence and disappear with the money," he warned. "We need law enforcement to move simultaneously on multiple fronts." That's when Sarah from Elder Protection Services suggested we bring in the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. The interstate nature of Miranda's operation and the offshore banking made it a federal case, which meant resources and authority that local police couldn't provide. Agent Rebecca Torres became the lead investigator, and her first meeting with me changed everything. Unlike my family's emotional dismissals, Agent Torres approached the case with clinical professionalism and immediately recognized the evidence quality. "This is excellent documentation," Agent Torres said, reviewing my carefully organized files. "Whoever compiled this understood exactly what prosecutors would need to build a case. The paper trail is comprehensive, and the email evidence provides clear intent to commit fraud." The FBI's investigation moved quickly once they understood the scope of Miranda's crimes. Within 2 weeks, they'd obtained warrants for all her financial records, interviewed her other victims, and built a federal case that included charges of wire fraud, elder abuse, and money laundering. But I wasn't content to let law enforcement handle everything. I wanted my family to understand exactly what they'd done by choosing Miranda over truth and justice. So I planned my own revelation, a family meeting where they'd learn about Miranda's crimes not from news reports or court documents, but from watching FBI agents arrest her in real time. I called my mother and suggested a reconciliation dinner at Grandma Rose's house, claiming I wanted to apologize for my accusations and make peace with Miranda. My mother was thrilled, believing I'd finally come to my senses and accepted their version of events. "Oh, honey, I'm so glad you're ready to move past this," she said over the phone. "Miranda has been so hurt by your accusations, but she's willing to forgive you because she loves you. We all just want our family back together." The irony was perfect. They thought they were getting their compliant, apologetic Harper back. Instead, they were about to witness the complete destruction of everything Miranda had built on lies and stolen money. I coordinated with Agent Torres to time the arrest for exactly 7 p.m. 30 minutes into our family dinner. Miranda would be relaxed, surrounded by people who believed in her innocence, completely unprepared for the storm about to hit. As I drove to Grandma Rose's house that evening, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Complete certainty that justice was finally coming. Miranda had underestimated me, dismissed me as a jealous family member making desperate accusations. She had no idea that while she'd been stealing and lying, I'd been methodically building her destruction. The family was all there when I arrived. Parents, siblings, uncles, aunts, and Miranda herself playing the role of devoted caregiver as she helped Grandma Rose prepare dinner. Everyone seemed genuinely happy to see me, believing this marked the end of our family conflict. "Harper," Miranda exclaimed, approaching me with open arms as if we were the closest of friends. "I'm so glad you're here. I know we've had some misunderstandings, but family is what matters most." I hugged her back, thinking about those emails where she'd called our grandmother degrading names and celebrated each successful theft. "You're absolutely right," I said with a smile. "Family is what matters most. And the truth always comes out eventually." She looked puzzled by my phrasing, but before she could ask what I meant, the doorbell rang. Right on schedule. The sound of the doorbell at exactly 7 p.m. sent electricity through my entire body. I watched Miranda's face as Agent Torres and 3 other FBI agents displayed their badges and requested entry. The transformation was instantaneous. Miranda went from confident family darling to terrified criminal in the space of a heartbeat. "Miranda Thompson, you're under arrest for wire fraud, elder abuse, and money laundering," Agent Torres announced, producing handcuffs as the other agents secured the scene. "You have the right to remain silent." The family's reaction was pure chaos. My mother started screaming about mistakes and misunderstandings while my father demanded to see warrants. My brother David jumped up to physically defend Miranda before Agent Torres firmly guided him back to his seat. Uncle Robert kept shouting about family loyalty and persecution. But through all the noise and confusion, I watched my grandmother's face with fascination. As Agent Torres read the charges aloud, $63,000 stolen from Rose Thompson, forged signatures on legal documents, exploitation of an elderly person. Something cleared in Grandma Rose's eyes that I hadn't seen in months. "The money," she whispered, looking directly at Miranda with sudden clarity. "You took my money. I remember now. You said it was for investments, but you took it for yourself." Miranda's desperate denials crumbled as Grandma Rose's memories returned with startling precision. The medication fog that had made her vulnerable to manipulation seemed to lift as the reality of the situation penetrated her confusion. "I trusted you." Grandma Rose continued, her voice growing stronger. "When you said I'd sign those papers, I believed you. When you said Harper was trying to steal from me, I believed you. But you were the thief all along." The family fell silent as our 84-year-old matriarch delivered the most damning testimony possible. Miranda tried one last manipulation attempt, claiming she'd only been trying to help manage complex finances, but Grandma Rose wasn't having it. "Don't you dare," Grandma Rose said with a fire I hadn't seen from her in years. "I raised you after your parents died. I put you through college. I gave you my trust and my love, and you repaid me by stealing my security and trying to destroy Harper's reputation when she tried to protect me." As the FBI agents led Miranda away, she locked eyes with me one final time. All her charm and manipulation had evaporated, leaving only naked hatred and the recognition that I'd completely outplayed her. "This isn't over," she hissed as Agent Torres guided her toward the door. "Actually, it is," I replied calmly. "But this is just the beginning of your consequences." The aftermath of Miranda's arrest created a massive shift in family dynamics, but not the immediate redemption I'd hoped for. While Grandma Rose's clarity about the theft was vindication, several family members struggled to accept how completely they'd been manipulated. My mother spent the rest of that evening switching between apologizing to me and defending her support of Miranda. "How could we have known?" she kept asking. "She seemed so devoted, so helpful. And you were so angry all the time, Harper. We thought you were just jealous." But my brother David's reaction was the most problematic. Instead of acknowledging his mistake, he doubled down on defending Miranda and attacking me for orchestrating this whole thing. "You planned this," he accused me the next morning when he showed up at my apartment. "You manipulated everyone, including the FBI, to destroy Miranda because you couldn't handle that she was more successful than you." David's denial ran so deep that he actually hired a lawyer to defend Miranda and started a family campaign to raise money for her legal fees. He convinced Uncle Robert and Aunt Susan that Miranda was being framed by a vindictive criminal justice system, turning what should have been family healing into an ongoing civil war. The division became clear when David organized a Support Miranda meeting at his house the following weekend. Half the family attended, including some members I'd expected to support truth and justice. They created a narrative where Miranda was the victim of my elaborate revenge scheme, and the FBI was complicit in persecuting an innocent woman. The gaslighting was so intense that I began questioning my own memories and motivations. Had I really been seeking justice for Grandma Rose? Or was there some part of me that enjoyed destroying Miranda? The self-doubt was corrosive and exactly what David intended. That's when Sarah Martinez from Elder Protection Services became more than just a professional ally. She became a crucial emotional support system. Sarah had seen this family dynamic countless times in abuse cases. "What you're experiencing is secondary victimization," Sarah explained during one of our coffee meetings. When families can't accept that they failed to protect a vulnerable member, they often turn on the person who exposed the abuse. It's easier to blame the messenger than acknowledge their own failure. Sarah introduced me to other family members who'd gone through similar situations. Adult children who'd exposed financial abuse only to be ostracized by relatives who couldn't handle the truth. Their stories gave me strength and perspective during the darkest moments of family betrayal. But my strongest ally emerged from an unexpected source. Detective James Walsh had continued investigating Miranda's broader network of victims, and he'd discovered something that would change everything. "Harper, we found another victim," James told me during a phone call 3 weeks after Miranda's arrest. "But this one's different. This victim has family members who've been looking for answers for over a year." The victim was Margaret Patterson, a 78-year-old widow whose granddaughter Elena had been fighting to investigate her grandmother's missing retirement funds. Elena Patterson was a forensic accountant who'd suspected financial abuse but couldn't prove it until James connected Margaret's case to Miranda's broader pattern. Elena and I met at a downtown coffee shop, and the connection was immediate. She'd been through the exact same family dismissal and gaslighting that I'd experienced, but with professional training that helped her understand the psychological dynamics. "They made me feel crazy," Elena told me, describing her family's reaction to her abuse allegations. "My own cousins called me paranoid and money-hungry. They said I was trying to steal from Grandma Margaret myself by making false accusations against Miranda." Elena's professional expertise proved invaluable in understanding Miranda's sophisticated money laundering operation. She'd identified patterns in the financial records that even the FBI had missed, showing how Miranda had used nonprofit resources to facilitate her crimes. But more importantly, Elena understood the emotional toll of being the family truth-teller. She helped me develop strategies for dealing with the ongoing gaslighting from David and his supporters, while building evidence for civil lawsuits that would recover stolen money. "The criminal case is just the beginning," Elena explained. "Miranda has assets hidden in multiple accounts and properties. We can force recovery of everything she stole, plus damages for the emotional trauma she caused." Working with Elena gave me a sense of purpose beyond just seeking revenge. We were building a comprehensive case that would not only punish Miranda, but also create precedents for protecting other elderly victims of financial abuse. Our alliance attracted attention from other families dealing with similar situations. Soon, we had a network of adult children, grandchildren, and professional advocates all working together to expose financial elder abuse and support families torn apart by these crimes. The group meetings became a source of strength and strategy. We shared information about investigative techniques, legal resources, and emotional coping mechanisms. Most importantly, we validated each other's experiences when our own families chose denial over difficult truths. But even as our external support network grew stronger, the division within my family deepened. David's Support Miranda campaign gained momentum, creating a permanent rift that would define family relationships for years to come. The turning point came when David convinced my parents to visit Miranda in jail and publicly declare their continued support for her. The local newspaper covered their visit, quoting my mother as saying she still believed in Miranda's innocence despite temporary legal troubles. Reading that article felt like a knife to the heart. My own mother was publicly defending the woman who'd stolen from her mother and destroyed our family's trust. The betrayal was complete and devastating. That's when Elena helped me understand that some family relationships simply cannot survive the truth. "You can't force people to choose justice over comfort," she said. "Some family members will always choose the lie that makes them feel better over the truth that requires them to take action." The realization was liberating and heartbreaking simultaneously. I finally understood that seeking my family's validation or approval was pointless. They'd made their choice, and it wasn't justice or truth or protecting vulnerable family members. So I made my choice too. Elena, Sarah, James, and the other abuse victims' families became my chosen family. People who valued truth over convenience and protection of the vulnerable over maintaining false peace. But just when I thought the family dynamics had settled into permanent division, David's campaign took a turn that would threaten everything we'd built and force me to make the hardest decisions of my life. Just when I thought our alliance was unbreakable, the worst possible betrayal came from within our own support network. 3 months after Miranda's arrest, as we were building civil cases against her and preparing testimony for her criminal trial, I discovered that someone I trusted completely had been feeding information directly to David and his Support Miranda campaign. The revelation came during what should have been a routine strategy meeting at Elena's office. We'd been discussing Miranda's hidden assets in the Cayman Islands when Elena noticed discrepancies in our confidential financial documents. "Harper, did you share our asset recovery spreadsheet with anyone outside our group?" Elena asked, pulling up files on her computer with a frown. "Because someone has been accessing our cloud storage from an unauthorized IP address." My stomach dropped as Elena traced the digital footprints. The unauthorized access had been happening for weeks, with someone systematically downloading every document we'd compiled about Miranda's financial crimes, our legal strategy, and our evidence for civil recovery. But the real shock came when Elena identified the source. The unauthorized access was coming from Sarah Martinez's home computer. Sarah, the Elder Protection Services caseworker who'd been my first ally and strongest emotional support throughout this entire ordeal. "That's impossible," I said, staring at the screen in disbelief. "Sarah introduced me to you. She helped me understand elder abuse patterns. She's been fighting for victims like my grandmother for years." Elena's investigation revealed the devastating truth. Sarah had been secretly recording our conversations, photographing our documents, and providing detailed intelligence to David about our legal strategy. But the betrayal went even deeper than simple information sharing. Sarah had been systematically undermining our case from the beginning. When other Miranda victims had contacted Elder Protection Services, Sarah had discouraged them from joining our group, claiming their cases were too weak or unlikely to succeed. She'd redirected potential allies away from our network while pretending to support our efforts. The evidence of Sarah's betrayal was overwhelming when Elena compiled it. Recorded phone calls where Sarah fed David information about our planned legal moves. Email exchanges where she helped David's lawyer anticipate our strategy and prepare counter-arguments. Bank records showing payments from David to Sarah for consulting services. But the most damaging betrayal was Sarah's manipulation of my grandmother's testimony. While pretending to help Grandma Rose prepare for Miranda's trial, Sarah had actually been coaching her to give confusing, contradictory statements that would undermine the prosecution's case. "Look at this," Elena said, showing me hidden video recordings Sarah had made of her sessions with Grandma Rose. "She's deliberately creating confusion about dates and amounts, making your grandmother appear incompetent as a witness." The recordings were heartbreaking. I watched my grandmother, who'd regained so much clarity after Miranda's arrest, become confused and uncertain again under Sarah's subtle psychological manipulation. Sarah would ask leading questions designed to make Grandma Rose doubt her own memories, then act sympathetic when confusion resulted. The realization that I'd been betrayed by someone I trusted completely sent me into an emotional tailspin. Sarah had been my confidant during the darkest moments of family rejection. I'd shared my deepest fears and vulnerabilities with her, believing she understood the trauma of exposing family abuse. But Elena's forensic analysis revealed that Sarah's betrayal wasn't random or opportunistic. It was a calculated, long-term operation. Sarah had been working with David almost from the moment I first contacted Elder Protection Services, feeding him intelligence while pretending to support my efforts. The motive became clear when we discovered Sarah's personal connection to Miranda. Sarah's sister worked at the same nonprofit where Miranda had been stealing from elderly clients. If Miranda's crimes were fully exposed, the nonprofit would face massive liability and potential closure, destroying Sarah's sister's career. Sarah had been protecting her family's interests while destroying mine, using her position of trust to sabotage justice for abuse victims. The betrayal was so complete and devastating that I seriously considered abandoning the entire effort. "Maybe David was right," I told Elena during one of my darkest moments. "Maybe I am just vindictive and obsessed with destroying people. Maybe Miranda really was just trying to help, and I've created this whole conspiracy because I can't accept that someone else was more successful." The gaslighting had worked perfectly. Sarah's betrayal made me question everything I thought I knew about truth, justice, and my own motivations. She'd used her professional credibility and my emotional vulnerability to plant seeds of doubt that nearly destroyed my confidence in the entire case. But the practical damage was even worse than the emotional trauma. Sarah's intelligence had allowed David's legal team to anticipate and counter every move we'd planned. Miranda's criminal defense now had access to our complete strategy, our witness list, our financial evidence, and our psychological assessments of family dynamics. The criminal trial, which should have been a straightforward conviction based on overwhelming evidence, became a complex battle where Miranda's lawyers seemed to know our moves before we made them. They challenged every piece of evidence we'd carefully compiled, discredited witnesses we'd spent months preparing, and created reasonable doubt where none should have existed. The preliminary hearing was a disaster. Miranda's lawyer presented our own confidential documents as evidence of my obsessive vendetta against his client. He used Sarah's secretly recorded conversations to paint me as manipulative and vindictive, twisting my words to suggest I'd fabricated evidence out of jealousy. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Miranda's lawyer said during his opening statement, "this case isn't about elder abuse or financial crime. This is about a bitter family feud where one member has weaponized the criminal justice system to destroy someone she's always resented." Watching Miranda's smug smile as her lawyer used my own words against me was devastating. She knew about Sarah's betrayal, had probably been coordinating with David and Sarah throughout the entire process. While I'd been building what I thought was an airtight case, they'd been building a defense strategy based on complete intelligence about my every move. The judge's preliminary ruling was a catastrophe. Based on the defense's arguments about my questionable motives and the inconsistent testimony from my grandmother, he dismissed half the charges against Miranda and reduced her bail to an amount her supporters could easily pay. Miranda walked out of that courthouse a free woman surrounded by David and her other family supporters, while I faced the possibility that she might escape justice entirely. The betrayal by Sarah had turned what should have been certain victory into potential complete defeat. But just when everything seemed lost, Elena made a discovery that would change everything and introduce an ally I never could have imagined. The breakthrough came from the most unlikely source imaginable: Miranda's own boyfriend, Marcus Webb, the same man who'd helped her plan and execute her crimes for over 2 years. 3 days after Miranda's courthouse victory, Marcus appeared at Elena's office with information that would completely reverse our fortunes. Marcus looked terrible, unshaven, exhausted, and clearly terrified. He'd been watching Miranda's trial preparation and realized that her lawyers were planning to throw him under the bus as the real mastermind behind the financial crimes while portraying Miranda as another victim of manipulation. "She's going to destroy me," Marcus told us, his hands shaking as he pulled out a laptop bag. Miranda's lawyer told her she could get complete immunity if she testified that I forced her to steal the money and threatened her grandmother if she didn't cooperate. She's going to claim I was abusing her and controlling her finances. The laptop Marcus brought contained 3 years of detailed records that Miranda had kept, believing she was documenting their shared criminal enterprise for protection. Instead, she'd created the most comprehensive evidence of her guilt imaginable. Elena's eyes widened as she opened file after file of Miranda's meticulous criminal documentation. Spreadsheets tracking every theft with dates, amounts, and methods. Video recordings of her forging signatures while joking about her victims' gullibility. Financial projections showing how much money they could steal before anyone noticed. But the most devastating evidence was Miranda's personal journal, where she'd documented her psychological manipulation techniques with scientific precision. She'd studied elder abuse methodologies, researched legal vulnerabilities, and planned every aspect of her crimes with cold calculation. "Listen to this entry," Elena said, reading from Miranda's journal with disgust. March 15th. "Grandma Rose signed the power of attorney today while on pain medication. She was so grateful for my help that she cried. These old people are so pathetically easy to manipulate. By the time anyone notices the missing money, I'll be in the Cayman Islands with enough cash to disappear forever." The journal entries continued for pages, detailing Miranda's complete lack of remorse and her strategic planning for each new victim. She'd researched their medical conditions, studied their family relationships, and identified their psychological vulnerabilities with predatory precision. Marcus also provided access to Miranda's secret social media accounts, where she'd bragged to friends about her easy money from stupid old people who don't understand modern finance. The posts were filled with photos of expensive vacations, designer purchases, and luxury experiences, all funded by stolen money from elderly victims. But the most shocking revelation came when Marcus showed us Miranda's backup plan. She'd been preparing to flee the country with all the stolen money, leaving him to face criminal charges alone, while she started a new life in a non-extradition country. She already bought airline tickets to the Cayman Islands under a fake identity, Marcus revealed, showing us booking confirmations and forged passport documents. She was planning to disappear the day before her trial started, leaving me and everyone else to take the blame. Elena immediately contacted Agent Torres, who coordinated with international law enforcement to freeze Miranda's offshore accounts and cancel her travel documents. Within hours, Miranda went from feeling secure about her legal strategy to realizing that her entire escape plan had been exposed. But Marcus provided even more valuable intelligence about Sarah's betrayal. He'd been present during multiple meetings where Sarah, David, and Miranda's lawyers coordinated their strategy to undermine our case and discredit my testimony. Sarah wasn't just feeding them information, Marcus explained. She was actively helping them plan psychological warfare against Harper. They studied her emotional triggers, identified her insecurities, and crafted specific approaches to make her doubt herself and abandon the case. The recordings Marcus provided revealed the full scope of their conspiracy. Sarah had been conducting psychological profiles of me, analyzing my behavior patterns, and advising David on exactly how to manipulate my emotions for maximum damage. But Marcus's cooperation came with a price. He wanted complete immunity in exchange for his testimony against Miranda and Sarah. Agent Torres agreed to the deal, recognizing that Marcus's evidence was so comprehensive that it guaranteed convictions for the primary perpetrators. The new evidence completely transformed our legal position. Instead of being on the defensive about my motivations and credibility, we now had irrefutable proof of Miranda's calculated criminality and the conspiracy to obstruct justice. But the real game changer came when Elena discovered that Miranda's crimes extended far beyond what any of us had realized. Using Marcus's access to her complete financial records, Elena uncovered a network of over 20 elderly victims and stolen amounts exceeding $2 million. This isn't just elder abuse, Elena told me as she compiled the evidence. This is organized financial crime on a massive scale. Miranda was running a sophisticated operation targeting vulnerable elderly people across 3 states. The scope of Miranda's crimes triggered federal racketeering charges which carried mandatory minimum sentences that her lawyers couldn't negotiate away. The FBI's expanded investigation revealed connections to other financial predators, making Miranda a crucial witness in broader criminal cases. But the most satisfying development was watching David's Support Miranda campaign collapse as the new evidence became public. Family members who defended Miranda and attacked me were forced to confront the reality of her calculated cruelty and extensive criminal network. Uncle Robert, who'd been one of Miranda's strongest supporters, called me with a tearful apology after reading her journal entries about manipulating our family. "Harper, I'm so sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "We failed you and we failed Grandma Rose. Miranda fooled us all, but that's no excuse for turning on you when you were trying to protect our family." The public exposure of Sarah's betrayal also triggered an investigation into Elder Protection Services, revealing that she'd been sabotaging abuse cases for years to protect her sister's nonprofit employer. Sarah was fired and faced her own criminal charges for obstruction of justice and conspiracy. Most importantly, Grandma Rose's clarity returned completely once Sarah's manipulative interference ended. With Marcus's evidence proving Miranda's guilt beyond any doubt, Grandma Rose was able to give powerful victim impact testimony that devastated Miranda's remaining support. "She looked me in the eye every Sunday and told me she loved me," Grandma Rose said during Miranda's rescheduled hearing. "She hugged me while she was stealing my security and planning to abandon me with nothing. The betrayal isn't just financial. It's a destruction of everything I thought I knew about family and trust." As Miranda's new trial date approached, her legal position had become hopeless. The overwhelming evidence combined with Marcus's testimony and the federal racketeering charges meant she was facing decades in prison with no possibility of plea bargaining. But the personal victory was even more meaningful than the legal one. My family had been forced to confront their failure to support truth and justice. And most of them were ready to begin the difficult work of rebuilding relationships based on honesty rather than comfortable lies. The vindication felt complete, but I was about to learn that true justice required more than just punishing the criminals. Miranda's final trial was everything I'd hoped for when this nightmare began 18 months earlier. Facing overwhelming evidence, federal racketeering charges, and testimony from over 20 victims, Miranda's lawyers advised her to accept a plea bargain that would send her to federal prison for 15 years. With full restitution required. But Miranda's arrogance proved to be her final downfall. She refused the plea deal, believing she could still manipulate a jury into sympathy, despite the mountain of evidence against her. Her decision to go to trial gave all her victims the opportunity to face her in court and tell the world exactly what she'd done to us. The trial lasted 3 weeks. And every day brought new revelations about Miranda's calculated cruelty. The prosecution presented her journal entries, social media posts, recorded conversations, and financial records that painted a picture of a sophisticated predator who'd targeted vulnerable elderly people for systematic exploitation. When I took the stand to testify, I finally had the chance to tell the complete truth without family interference or manipulation. I described discovering the stolen money being dismissed and gaslit by my own family, and watching Miranda nearly escape justice through lies and manipulation. The defendant didn't just steal money from my grandmother. I testified looking directly at Miranda. She stole our family's trust, our sense of security, and our faith in each other. She turned people who should have protected a vulnerable elderly woman into accomplices in her abuse. Grandma Rose's testimony was the most powerful moment of the entire trial. At 84 years old, she spoke with clarity and strength about the betrayal and violation she'd experienced at Miranda's hands. "I raised her from childhood after her parents died." Grandma Rose said, her voice steady despite the emotion in her words. "I gave her my love, my trust, and my financial security. She repaid that love by stealing from me and trying to destroy my granddaughter when Harper tried to protect me. The money can be recovered, but the trust can never be restored." The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all charges. Miranda was sentenced to 22 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for 15 years. She was also ordered to pay full restitution of $2.3 million to all her victims, plus additional damages for emotional trauma. Sarah received 5 years in prison for conspiracy and obstruction of justice, while her sister lost her nonprofit job and faced civil liability for enabling the financial crimes. The Elder Protection Services Agency implemented new oversight procedures and training programs to prevent future corruption. But the most satisfying consequence was watching David face the reality of his choices. When Marcus's recordings revealed how David had participated in psychological warfare against me, other family members finally understood the depth of his betrayal. My parents confronted David about his role in supporting Miranda and undermining my efforts to protect Grandma Rose. The family meeting was explosive, with years of buried resentments and enabling behavior finally brought into the open. "You nearly helped a criminal escape justice because you couldn't admit you were wrong about Harper," my mother told David, her voice shaking with anger. "You participated in psychological abuse against your own sister to protect someone who was stealing from your grandmother." David's marriage also collapsed when his wife learned about his involvement in the conspiracy. She'd been kept in the dark about his payments to Sarah and his coordination with Miranda's legal team, and she couldn't accept his deception and betrayal of family members. The civil recovery process took another 8 months, but Elena's expertise ensured that we recovered every dollar Miranda had stolen, plus significant additional damages. Grandma Rose's financial security was completely restored with enough extra to ensure excellent care for the rest of her life. But beyond the legal victories and financial recovery, the most important outcome was the rebuilding of authentic family relationships based on truth rather than comfortable lies. Uncle Robert, Aunt Susan, and most of my cousins acknowledged their failure to support justice and began the difficult work of earning back trust. My parents went through family counseling to understand how their enabling behavior had contributed to the crisis and learned new patterns of communication that prioritized truth over conflict avoidance. The process was painful but necessary for genuine healing. Most importantly, I learned to set boundaries with family members who couldn't or wouldn't choose truth over convenience. David never acknowledged his betrayal or apologized for his actions, so I made the healthy decision to limit contact with him while maintaining relationships with family members who'd done the work of accountability. The experience taught me that biological family doesn't automatically deserve loyalty or trust. Those bonds must be earned through consistent choices that demonstrate love, respect, and commitment to each other's well-being. When blood relatives fail that standard, it's not only acceptable but necessary to create boundaries and find chosen family who share your values. Elena became like a sister to me, and our professional collaboration evolved into a deep, personal friendship. We continued working together on elder abuse cases, using our experience to help other families navigate similar crises and recover from financial predators. Grandma Rose and I developed a closer relationship than we'd ever had, bonded by our shared survival of Miranda's betrayal and the family's initial failure to protect us. She moved into an assisted living community where she's thriving, surrounded by friends and activities that bring her joy. The other victims in Miranda's network became an extended support family connected by our shared experience of fighting for justice against overwhelming odds. We meet quarterly to celebrate our victories and support anyone still dealing with ongoing legal or family challenges. Most surprisingly, Marcus has become a valuable ally in our continued work against financial elder abuse. His insider knowledge of predatory techniques has helped law enforcement agencies improve their investigative methods and training programs. The trauma of this experience will always be part of my story, but it's no longer the defining element of my identity. I learned that I'm stronger than I ever imagined, more capable of standing alone when necessary, and more discerning about who deserves my trust and loyalty. Sometimes people ask if I regret exposing Miranda and destroying the family's comfortable illusions. The answer is absolutely not. Justice isn't always comfortable or convenient, but it's necessary for healing and growth. Protecting vulnerable people from predators is more important than maintaining false peace. This whole experience taught me that family loyalty should never require enabling abuse or ignoring crimes against vulnerable members. True love sometimes means making people uncomfortable with truth, rather than enabling them to continue harmful behavior. So here's my question for all of you watching. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what's right? Have you experienced that moment when you realized the people who should protect you were actually protecting your abuser? Drop a comment and let me know your thoughts, because these family dynamics are more common than most people realize. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button because it helps other people find these videos when they're dealing with similar family crises. And definitely subscribe for more stories about standing up to family members who abuse their power and manipulate vulnerable people. Share this video with anyone who might be dealing with elder abuse or family betrayal, because sometimes people need to see that others have survived these situations and found justice on the other side. Thank you so much for watching and supporting this channel. My hope is that sharing my family revenge story helps other people recognize manipulation tactics, trust their instincts about financial abuse, and understand that choosing truth over family comfort is sometimes the most loving thing you can do. Remember that blood doesn't make family. Consistent love, respect, and protection of vulnerable members makes family. Choose your people wisely, trust your instincts, and never apologize for protecting those who can't protect themselves.